I'm going to try to strip the whole world of politics down into a couple simple bullet points uh, or analogies. The individual, the state, and the New World Order. The existing world order, the state is mediating the individual and individual consciousness. It is a mediator between the individual and a world system that exists right now based upon state sovereignty. Therefore, it mediates our relationship between a potential totalitarian world government. It's like, who said total? Yeah, by definition, one government is that's totality. If you read the Federalist Papers, that's the precise definition of it. There's no factions, hence so these states were built as a check upon which just by definition is totalitarian and tyrannical by definition. Through read Montesquieu, read Plato, read Hobbes, it's totalitarianism. So the state is mediating us from what we lovingly is what is lovingly referred to as globalism. Those globalists. But for real, we see the New World Order as a breaking away of these borders. And now how does that change your relationship with man? And I'm looking at this in terms of biopolitics. I want to say, in a world where it's not quite sure who the true sovereign is it the state? Is it Kansas? Is it the federal government? Is it the United Nations? Who has the sovereign right over my body? And the philosopher Giorgio Agamben, fantastic thinker, traced this tradition back to ancient Latin law, and it was included in the Roman sea law. That's still fundamentally the backbone of how the oligarchs project their power, through corporations. Look at the Gollum of the corporation, and through sea law. So in that sense, Rome, yes, is alive. The individual, his biopolitical relationship. So I'm exploring that, and it's a no-brainer between Agamben and Foucault. They saw this machinery that controls all parts of our body, and under the guise of sort of, in the progressive sense, being our mother and watching what we eat, it truly took over the power of life and death. But it's kind of vague and ambiguous. But that's why I do an esoteric reading of Foucault, because it's also obvious, because he hints at it. This system has operators, and that's Foucault. Agamben will say the same thing. In the germ of democracy is totalitarianism. It's its natural conclusion, and people created this. And we see in both cases they don't want. You have to read them esoterically, because that's why I do the deep state analysis. There's oligarchs. The system has operators. So with the corporation, you have Roman sea law, and what we talk about in international relations theory, we have hegemonic rule. So by definition, hegemonic rule, and this is what, if we just more recently, if we go to Portugal and Spain, Holland, the UK, and Pax Americana, by definition, hegemonic powers create and operate the international system. And that, in part and parcel, is this Roman sea law, which, the more you dig into it, is still very much fundamental and alive. But it's at the international level. Okay, so but that's the level from which oligarchs operate. They're internationalists, right? Hegemonic power then suggests, just as you explore things like the Federal Reserve and see that they're all connected to the same, apex of the bank in, Basel, Switzerland, a kind of one system, one corporation. And if you explore intelligence services, what you find is a connection between all of them. Do they bump into each other and they're double agents and drama? Of course. But in each case, when you investigate, it's just like when you're driving through your local community and what appears to be two companies fighting over who has the best hamburger, and they seem to be arch enemies, and you find out that they're in fact owned by the same people. And then you kind of, for a second, think, well, why were they fighting? This is how this mass corporate Gollum, and part of the project is shaping human nature. And that's why we're getting into biopolitics, Foucault, and so forth, because they're trying to find the undergirding of who true sovereignty is, because in Roman law, it's embedded that you have a right over life and death if you're the true sovereign. So we live in an age where a sovereign sort of hides itself, but it's still massively concerned with sort of this art of husbandry. They want to, as I've said elsewhere, make us in their image, or the image of, which seems to me, strange gods, and are very concerned with, I'll get into Seeds of Destruction and Ingdahl's book, but controlling the license on the code of the food we produce. And in esoteric terms, these seedless seeds seem to carry with it this ancient Babylonian agenda of a death culture. I know it sounds crazy, of a death culture. Whereas in this death culture, humans were noisy. They were a type of pollution. Humans now, by the 1960s, again, were another type of pollution. We breathe. Instead of making noise to their gods now told them we're breathing. So the individual, the state. So I'm concerned with the individual biopolitically. What's the agenda? Who are the true powers of control? I read from the controversy of Zion a moment ago, and we can trace this back to the 6th century BC as part of a master race plan. And that's, again, when one sees the possibilities of what I'm creating here, esoteric biopolitics, you begin to put a lot of events together in the world, seemingly disparate events.